Well, good afternoon. I'm coming to you. I'm making another video today. Uh, Been studying a little bit about miracles, and so I want to talk a little bit about the first miracle. There'll be a few things in here might be interested for non-believers, but mostly when we get through, I'm going to be talking to some believers and what some of the things that I think we don't understand and have a misunderstanding about comparing evolution and creationism. So I'm going to start out and talking a little bit about some of the things that I have learned today. And one of the things I've learned, and while I was studying, and I went back, and a lot of people thinks that evolution started with Darwin's theory. What he wrote, but I'm finding out that this is not something that was just Darwin. I'm finding that there was people that actually way back, and I'm gonna sit there and read you some of the names because I went back and actually started looking at some of them, and I was very impressed on some of the things that I learned that I did not know. I did not know that way before the birth of Christ, there was quite a few people that literally had come out about other origins other than creationism. And I'm going to read you some of them here, and you might want to look them up because we're going to go through some others. There was Examander. He lived from 1610 to 546 BC. He was the first one to talk about spontaneous generation. Diogenes from 412 to 323 BC introduced the concept of primordial slime. This is way before. So, kind of like as Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. This stuff has just been going on and on. But what the thing is we got people out there that has latched onto this as real proof. And so as I got going on and reading about some of these other ones, it was even before the birth of Christ and what happened versus what happened in Genesis, which is the first great miracles that God had done. And we're going to read about it, and we're going to discuss some things that I want Christians to understand. But, when we get looking even at the other ways that people thought, the Greeks sat there and felt that how the world was made because they were gods and why we were here and all this stuff was because they'd either got in a battle or they had sent people down to do it. The Egyptians had actually 3 different versions of how the world was made. And these were all myths and stuff, and we know it now. But there's just as much a big myth today on how the world was made as it was then. We got a theory that we call evolution, and we think we started out as a little ball of goo and it come out of this primordial ooze. And some of the stuff I've been reading and studying, especially about the bacterium they're saying, when they start saying it takes millions of years for that little enzyme or whatever it is has to change and be absorbed into a bacteria, for them to be able to have a bacteria that could make even simple life would take longer, and this is scientists saying this, than what the whole universe is believed to be old. So that's kind of one of the things I look at. And the other is I'm looking at is when they say the evolution, why, if we evolved, are there no fossil records across species? And why do we find not hardly any fossils until after the Cambrian period? And we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But one of the things I want to sit there and talk about, I see lots of proof to believe that God made the world in 7 days. But I've also heard a lot of Christian people sit there and says, well, he might have used evolution. It says in the Bible that a day in the life of the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years in a day in the life of the Lord. And he does say that. And the context was to give us an idea that our way of taking time could not compare to him, to his eternity. He was, he is, and he will always be. And he is using that to show us that we look at time one way, and it don't relate to anything that can be about God. So we need to remember that don't come in context with the original making. But what does is the scriptures that are in Genesis. And you know, when these people sit there and says, well, we don't know how long his day was. Well, actually we do. And so I'm going to go to Genesis. I am going to read the first part of the creation and how he done it. And we're going to talk about it, or I'm going to talk about it. And if you have a different view, hey, be sure and leave me a message below. Tell me the scriptures that you want to show me that can show you would be right. And we'll go back and forth and discuss them, because that's what I want some of my videos to be. I want people to hear what I think. I want to hear how I interpret what it says, and we can have a good discussion. We can go back and forth, and both of us learn. That's how we learn. And there's nothing wrong with Christian people sitting down discussing how we interpret things different. So anyway, I'm going to go over, and while I am going to Genesis, I want you to know, when I got looking historically, of course, you all hear me talk about history a lot. And you know that I love the old sayings of history. And when I look back and I look at people like Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Madison Adams, every one of them has had something to say about the maker of the heavens and earth. They didn't say evolution. They actually believed that we had a maker that inspired, that made, and was intelligent, and believe in intelligent design and the 7-day young earth theory. So that's what we're going to talk about. And then we might go in and talk a little bit at the very end. Another thing about how sophisticated we are, and another reason I can even look logically and think it could not be evolution. So here we go. I'm going to read it here, and this is out of the NASB, and you might see me struggle a little bit holding my Bible, because this one is very heavy and I'm very weak. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the water. Now, here we go. Very first verse, it said, in the beginning, God created. Now, does that give me a timeline? No. This is where some people says we don't know how long it takes. But as we go through, and when we get over to the fourth day, we're going to see a little different. But I want to see it. People that don't believe God did it, God says it's there in his word. And people says, well, where'd God come from? I don't know. That's one of the mysteries he hadn't told me. I don't know if he'll tell me when I get to heaven. I don't know if I'll ever know. All I know, God was, God is, and God will be, and he's always been. He says he's the Alpha and Omega. He is the beginning, the end, and that's what it'll be. Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw that light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was darkness, and he called night. And there was evening, and there were morning one day. So I want you to look at this. Evening and morning. Now that's how the Jews did. Their day started in the evening and went to the next evening. We start ours at midnight and we go back and forth, and there's a little difference in that. But evening to evening. All right, so if we go, our day is a 24-hour period, right? Well, people said, well, he don't say that. No, he goes evening to evening. So how do we prove that later on? As we go in through, I'm going to read more. But he always said it was good. Then God said, let there be an expanse in the middle of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. God made the expanse and separated the waters which were below the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse, and it was so. So God called the expanse heaven, and there were evening and there were morning of the second day. This is the day. Evening, right? Then God said, let the waters below the heavens gather into one place, and let dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and gathering of the waters he called the seas, and he saw that it was good. Here he's still making. Then God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed and fruits, trees on the earth bearing fruit after their own kind, with seeds in them. And it was so. Notice what he said, after their own kind. He did not say he made one and then it went to something else. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, and trees bearing fruit and seeds in them, and after their kind, God saw that it was good. There was evening and there was morning, a third day. Don't say thousands of years, people. Then God said, let there be light in the expanse in the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs, for seasons, for days, for years. And let them be for light in the expanse of the heavens, and give light on the earth. And it was good. So notice he just put the moon, the sun, and the stars. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser night to govern the night. He made the stars also. God placed them in the expanse of the heavens and gave light on the earth, and to govern the day and the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw it was good. There was evening and there was morning on the fourth day. So notice, fourth day, sun, moon, all this stuff, man. We had the light and the dark. He had already made the vegetation. And then it's still one day. So the Hebrew words that was used back in there actually is translated that originally was. It meant like a 24-hour period. So we know the original translations meant exactly like a 24-hour period, one day. That has been what's written from the beginning. And this is what bothers me is when we say, oh, well, it may have took God and he may have used evolution maybe in 1,000 years. No, it was one day, 24 hours. If you take anything away from that, you take away from the power and the deity of God. And I believe he totally did it in 24 hours. And that's what I see here written. That's what I don't see no variation at all about it. The only variation I see is when people starts mixing what God says against what we have a theory of some people that claim to be scientists think that they cannot prove, and it has not been proven anywhere. There is no crossovers. There is no link. They have never found it. It's the theory. They say we can't prove creationism. Well, I can only trust and have my faith in God. But they can't prove what they're trying to believe either. And actually, evolution has become a religion in itself when you think people are pushing it, supporting it, all on faith because they have no proof. All right. So here I got to go back and find my place. And God said, let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures. Let the birds fly above the earth and open the expanse of heaven. God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them in saying, be fruitful and multiply, fill the waters and the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. Then there was evening, and there was morning on the fifth day. And then God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind. Excuse me, I got to move over. And I struggle turning pages too. And creepy things and beasts of the earth after their kind. It was so. God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind. And God saw that it was good. You notice, after its kind. He didn't say that he made a dog that turned into a cat, that turned into a monkey, that turned into a human. After its kind. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creepy thing that creeps on the earth. So I'm going to stop here for a second because I got a throwback one. You know what? I had somebody ask me the other day, he says, and they're a different belief. And they said, you believe in three gods. And this is what they went to because it says, let us make man in our kind. He don't understand the Trinity when it says our in Genesis. It's talking about the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. How do I know the Son was involved? Go to John 1:1, read what it says about Jesus. That was a physical part of God, which is part of the Trinity. So all was there, all was involved. That's why we got it our instead of mine. God created man in his own image, and the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the sky, over every living thing that moves on the earth. And then God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of the earth, every tree which has fruit yielding seed, it shall be for food for you. And every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth which has life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw that all he made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning on the sixth day. Now, I'm going to stop right there because we know on the seventh day he rested, and how great that was. And that is the first miracle that is recorded in the Bible. And sometimes we forget about that. We look at the miracles that Jesus done and even some of the miracles in the Old Testament, but we forget about the original first miracle. So I want to ask you something. For you people that says, well, I can't justify that and I don't see where you're coming from. So we sit there and we see how complicated God has made us. You even take simple life. I'll take a bat. So for us to come out of a little single cell, turn into something else, crawl out on the bank, be turned to something else, change into other things, and have that evolution of all the different things it takes. So let's look at just part of a silly bat. So a bat is specialized. He had to have special wings. He has a special thing in him that makes that noise so they can send that sound out. Special ears that can hear it so it can come back. A special way to fly in and catch the bugs. So you got all this stuff, and that's pretty simple. Now that ain't even going into the DNA and all that stuff that makes it. So you just think, not just one thing had to evolve, every one of them, and they had to do it exactly at the same time. Probability of that is unbelievably so high, I don't see how it can happen. It shows me the proof that they can only be intelligent in design. And people says, well, you don't think it could have accidentally happened. Well, you know, I ain't going to say that it couldn't, but that would be like asking a tornado to go through a junkyard and mixing everything up and all of a sudden coming out with a 747 ready to fly. The probability would probably be about the same. So I want you to think about that. And then when you look at us and how complex we are, if you can think of anything but intelligent John made us. So I went and had my wife bring me in something. You see that right there? Little mousetrap. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. Did that design itself? No. Somebody had to think about it. You know what? You remove any part of this, it won't work. You know what? You remove any part of God's design from what he designed intelligently, we don't work. That's just plain and simple. So Christians, I want you to think about today. Can you really read Genesis, read the miracle of what God had done, and sit there and tell me you can believe that we evolved? Now, God has been wonderfully making us where we adapt. And yes, do we have different things, but a dog is still a dog, a horse is still a horse, a cow is still a cow, and a human is still a human. Even though sometimes I think people are so nutty because, especially in today, when I see all the riots, I'm beginning to wonder if people have forgot that humans come in all colors because God wonderfully made us and made us where we could adapt. That's why we have different colors. That's why He sent us other places. And you generally find out that we adapted to wherever God had let us be. So just think of all this. God is so wonderful and so smart and so awesome, and His miracle was so great of what we have. Look at us. Hey, look at a turtle. Look at a bat. Better yet, look at a lightning bug. They're out where I'm living. Love looking out the window and watching them go glow. How awesome is that, that God provides a way for everything? You know, He provides a way for each one of us too. And I just want to remind people, if you're reading the Bible, if you can't believe all of it, how can you believe any of it? If you can believe part of it's wrong, how do we know what else is wrong? I believe every word, word for word, just as it's written, and I ain't going to back up a bit, and I'm going to share it just like that. I just want you all to think about it. If you don't agree, put me some messages down below. I am asking you to start sharing my videos off YouTube. If I lay them over on Facebook, please share them there too. I want more people to see them. If I can make a difference in one person's life, that's all I want. You know, if I can sit there and just in a short period reach one person, then all these videos and my time is worthwhile. Love you all. Be sure and share. Say prayers for me. I need them every day. Don't know anything else to say. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.